Today is Wednesday, the 3rd of August, and I'm speaking with Mr. Hugh Brown of the Military Order of the Purple Heart from the Athens, Georgia chapter. And Mr. Brown, could you share with us a little bit of your experiences during the World War II era?
Certainly. I'll be happy to. And this is unorganized as it can be, so I think that in my instance it's not really, you can't just say, hey, on this date my World War II experience has started, because the preparation of or significant things that happened to me prior to some given date affected that. So, and I'm sure that this is true in many instances if you have the ability to really get a person to start where it started. For instance, this flag has a 48 star flag, and my grandfather flew it over his home in LaGrange, Oregon, while my father and his two brothers were in France. He had a flagpole, and he also had built a wooden cannon. And as things worked out, his three sons come home on the same day, and he was known to take a drink now and then. And on this occasion, he had probably one or two too many, and he was going to fire his cannon. And the sons seen what the condition was, and so they said, "No, Daddy, we'll take care of it, you know." And they didn't know what they were doing, and they charged the cannon with the powder and whatnot, lit the fuse. All of them got back away from them. They weren't sure what was going to happen, and it did. The cannon blew up. The house rocked, knocked out all the windows in the front of the house, which my grandmother wasn't too happy about. But this flag was there.
How long have you had possession of this flag?
Since my father's death. But it's been passed on and so forth. But that's what I'm saying. That's really when my experience started, was when I was about 6, 7 years old, listening to my father and his two brothers. And when Pearl Harbor happened, why, they ended up with, I had a brother in the Navy, shortly thereafter, a sister in the Marines, a younger brother in the Air Force. So you can see that probably this affected them, their actions. And you can't be brought up in that kind of condition without assuming a certain attitude that, hey, it's your turn now. And I guess many people were the same way. They enlisted or tried to enlist in some branch of the service. I was unsuccessful a couple of times, and then I finally got smart. I said, hey, all these folks know me and my family here. I'll just go about 90 miles away from here and register for the draft and request immediate induction. So that got around this proving how old you were or anything else, as long as you just went up and signed up in this county, and that's all it took. And being a big old farm boy just off the farm, I made the mistake of telling the people that interviewed me when I was inducted at Fort Lewis, Washington, that I knew about horses and lived with horses and dealt with horses, and consequently they sent me to the horse cavalry, which I objected to. I said, hey, I want to be in this tank business. I looked at enough horses back ends for last me. But they had this strange way of being able to tell you where you was going to go and what you were going to do. It wasn't a choice. It was, this is what you're going to do. And this was probably not just something that happened to me. It probably happened to a lot of people. Many of the National Guards were activated, and they were filled up from people just wherever. In my case, I ended up with the E Troop of the 124th Horse Cavalry. At that time, they were down in Brownsville, Texas, patrolling the Rio Grande River. And it was not uncommon at night to hear a patrol coming in, and you knew it was a patrol coming in because it'd go clink, 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 because you could get just exactly 3/5 of liquor in each saddlebag on the back of your saddle. And you could buy that liquor on the Mexican side of the river for about, $1.05 a fifth. And we had a standard buyer that worked for the Army there. He was civilian. Would pay us $5 for each fifth of booze that we brought back. So it was very, at that time, $5 was about 10% of your private's pay. So, and I'm sure everybody knew what was going on, but it was one of these things that it didn't seem to hurt anybody, and it was quite nice. Unfortunately, they needed us someplace else and packed us up, shipped us up to Camp Funston, just outside of Fort Riley. It's an old time. It had been a Army cavalry base during World War I. And from there, we went to Newport News and went aboard the ship with boots and breeches and ditty bags. And of course, people nowadays are not, they talk about ditty bags. The ditty bag really contained the accoutrements that you needed to take care of your equipment, such as your saddle soap and sponge to take care of your saddle. And you had what is the dock cloth. And the dock cloth is just, you reach, get the horse's tail, pick it up, and wipe out the part the tail generally covers. And it was not, there were not too many people at that time had been too far removed from horses. I don't care where you lived in this country, there was a lot of horses around. And such other things as, and I guess sometimes we did it just out of damn orneriness. At a certain operation that you had to perform, or cleaning duty or maintenance duty of a horse that had been operated on. There's no longer a stallion. He would just become a plain horse and lost his part of his reproduction organs. And over time, dirt would build up in this area. And about once a month or so, you had to take some soap and water and reach and get the part of this horse that he uses in his reproduction business and reach up there with a hand and clean up on the interior of that thing. And it had a terrible, terrible odor, and it would not wash off. And it was a practice that after we did that, we immediately tried to go to town and go to some bar or something like that. And we would have the whole place to ourselves. And the owner generally found out that what it took was, hey, boys, if you'll go someplace else, I'll be glad to buy you dinner or something else. And so it worked to everybody's advantage. But anyway, we got on board ship, boots and breeches, and we were mounted. And, rumors. God, if the troops didn't have anything to talk about, I don't know what would have happened. They'd all went crazy, I guess. But here we are on this troop ship. Matter of fact, it's a Coast Guard manned transport. There was only one or two of them in the service. And we're going south. And we're going to Panama to secure some outposts down there because they haven't got any roads in there or all trails, and that's why they're going to use a mounted outfit. And when we crossed the equator, some of the brighter boys said, "Hey, we can't be going to Panama. Panama is north of the equator." So the next place we hit, we didn't get to go to shore in Cape Town, South Africa, but we said, "Hey, they're headed someplace else." And about that time, the invasion of the Philippines started, and I said, "Oh man, we're going to the Philippines because there was a lot of horse." Matter of fact, I think the last cavalry charge, it was the opening stage of World War II, was made in the Philippines by one of the horse cavalry regiments. And of course, nice thing about having horses, you always had something to eat if worse come to worse. So that we felt like we was destined for the Philippines. Well, we got to a place called Hobart, Tasmania. That's an island down south of the continent of Australia. Very, very lovely town. Deep water port, no tugs in this port at all. And we made up a convoy of 16 ships. And we knew we was going to the Philippines. Well, I don't know how many days elapsed after we sailed from Hobart, but we ended up in Bombay, India. And of course, we said, well, what are we doing in India? Well, we moved across the continent of India by jerks, and the railroads in India at that time had no standard rail gauge. Generally, a river would be the end of one line. It might be 5-foot wide rail, and on the other side of the river, it didn't have bridges on it, you dismount this train, get on a ferry, go across the river, load everything on a different gauge train, and you travel to the next significant river. The probably most telling memory would be sitting in a siding somewhere in India, looking through a palm tree at a big red moon up there. And I don't know why it's bothered me. But far off in the distance, here come this American train whistle. And as it turned out, this is one of these land-lease engines that's been remade to modify to fit the rails in India. But you talk about a bunch of homesick folks. That was really it. And we went on. Went up to Lido, India, and started from there. We staged and went to get some pack animals. And as per usual, the Army has their way of doing things. And when you're a outsider into a National Guard outfit that's been activated, and you just kind of fill in and round it out, This E-Troop was from Brenham, Texas. And I guess there was probably about 12 of us that was not from Brenham, Texas in this cavalry troop. And you can imagine who got most of the better details. So I was given orders to report down to the railhead at Lido to pick up 3 mules for our platoon that was going to carry our combat load. And so I went down and reported this big, shall we say, overly fed quartermaster major, and we were going to do it Army style. I was issued the brand. Your cavalry animals were all branded down the off side of their neck with a serial number. And he said, now you go in there and find those mules and take them with you. Well, these mules had been shipped about 9 months before that from St. Louis, Missouri, down the Mississippi, across the ocean, across all these changes of cars that I mentioned earlier, railroads. And they hadn't had a human hand laid on them in about 9 months. And they were just fat and sassy, and they just didn't cooperate too well. And you can imagine these herd of, I guess there's probably 600 mules in this big, tremendous corral, and I'm in there trying to find 3 of them by number. Well, needless to say, it was just a damn panic, funny panic, you know. And we didn't accomplish anything. We wasted the rest of that day. Went back to my unit. Said, hey, they said, hey, you got to go back and get those 3 mules. So early the next morning, I'm back down there again. And thank God the major had gone off someplace else, and the old sergeant, the old cavalry sergeant was there in charge. And he said, hey, now what we're going to do, he broke out a couple of bales of halter shanks, which are just a short rope with a snap on it. All these mules had halters on them, and you just went in and snapped. And he said, now everybody pick up a couple of halter shanks, go in there and catch the first damn mules you lay hands on, and tie them to the corral fence. And when we get the fence lined inside, bring the ones remaining and tie them to the outside of this corral. Well, that took us until about midday. We had all these damn mules tied up someplace. And then we proceeded to start searching for these ones by brand number. And I and the 2 other fellows on this detail with me, we found our 3 mules. Went back to the company area, and of course, there again, we strictly by the Army's way of doing things, said, okay, now this mule goes to your platoon. And he was a fat little tiger stripe mule, probably weighed 600 pounds maybe. But he didn't like Uncle Sam's Army way of doing things. So we was going to have some conditioning marches through the jungles there, just kind of shake down. So we put the Phillips pack saddle on old Tiger, and the combat load of ammunition that he was supposed to carry. And we got maybe 10 yards. Boy, old Tiger hit the first tree, damn Phillips pack saddle rolled over. And this repeated, going about every 50. The first tree he could get to, that's what happened. Well, we did that several hours. And of course, most of the other people had gone on, and we was confident that no one was really going to know what we were going to do with Tiger. So we took the load that he had, set it aside, went down to a branch here and got all the big rocks we could find, managed them up in a tarp, and it took about 6 of us to pick this up and pull old Tiger in underneath this load and cinch up the Phillips pack saddle. And old Tiger just stood there spraddle-legged walled his eyes, and everybody got a club. We got on each side, behind and in front of Tiger, and we just took Tiger on the march. Well, we got back to our bivouac area about dark, and old Tiger's tongue was hanging close to the ground. And the next day, when we put the lighter load on Tiger, he had done learned how he was going, boy. For the next I guess maybe 600 miles, old Tiger was right behind you, boy. He didn't give you a minute's trouble. So if you can imagine this going through a trail in the jungle, and a trail may be 3 to 4 feet wide, and a line of mules and equipment, so it's a necessity that you can go in single file. So you got a lot of exposure to the backside of a mule. And down through Burma, I kept thinking, Jesus, what are you doing here? You should have went in the Navy and got all the clean sheets, good food, all that. And we were, as I say, we were supposed to be a long-range penetration outfit. And those days they did it, you self-sustained in it. You had animals that were supposed to carry the bigger part of your load. And in theory, it was very good. We were supposed to get an airdrop every 3 or 4 days of supplies for us and food and oats for the mules. But that didn't work out in theory. There was a lot of clearings in the North Burma jungle, beautiful country really, that they'd fly over and kick out these sacks of sea rations and sacks of oats. But we had terrible difficulty in communications. The radios in that day and time just didn't function. We had and radio was the only contact we had with the outside world. And of course the heavier type, the old bigger radios you'd find at each squadron had a bicycle type generator, and it was sent out by key, or no voice. It was fairly reliable, but all the voice radios were, hell, some days good, some days bad. So you never knew what the atmospheric conditions would do. So we practiced economy. If we get a croaker sack with about 3 days, it was supposed to be 3 days of sea rations for each man. And when you carry it on your back, you measure it real carefully, like you cut off the handle of a toothbrush to save that extra weight. And if you're going to supposedly get three days rations, while you sit down and you ate them all up. You didn't carry any. You threw what you couldn't eat, so you ate the best part first, or whatever you like. And you gorged yourself, and then in the next 3 days maybe you'd have a cup of rice or whatever you come along on. So it was a very interesting time, and most of the people were young, versatile. One of the things was there, we had overabundance of tea we picked up locally in India and whatnot. And the last thing you did at night, you had a cup of tea, and the first thing you had in the morning was a cup of tea. And of course, you didn't carry that extra weight of cream or sugar or anything. You just had the tea. Tea was fairly light bulk. Put up with carrying that. And there's a lot of things that were funny, amusing, and went through a cotton field, and I'd never actually seen a cotton grow. There were several of us, and that was quite interesting, because most of these people from Texas, they were well aware of what cotton was and so on. And rice, I don't care where you was at in Burma, you was within a half a mile of a big stash of rice of somebody's, where the Japanese had left it or where the Burmese had left it. Most of the natives had big baskets, and they'd put rice and stored rice, so it was not all that bad. And we went up, and finally, at the Battle of Michinaw was a real, if you had this on film then, it would put the Keystone Cops out of business. It was a battle for an airfield. We'd take it one day, the Japanese would come back and take it the next day, and we'd take it back the next day. And that went on for 4 days. And finally we prevailed, and when I left Michinaw airstrip there, the decision had been made. We didn't need the town. The airstrip was all what we wanted there, and we'd done what we'd had. And there's an interesting note there. There was this Merrill's Marauder thing. Incidentally, I should have brought that patch with me, but it's a minor thing. But they were actually a composite unit, 53rd 07 composite, and they were part of a larger force known as Galahad. Galahad was made up of the 53rd 07's composite, 124th Horse Cavalry Special, and some Chinese units. And they was known as the Galahad forces there. But at the time we left Michinaw, there was a young guy by the name of Orr. I used to know where he was from in Texas. He had designed this patch. If you ever seen the Merrill's Marauder patch, it's got a China star and a 5-pointed star and this Chinese gear wheel, whatever you want to call it, and the lightning stripe down through it. He had designed that, and the old 53rd 07 become the 475th Infantry. And the 475th Infantry and the 124th Horse Cavalry made a new unit known as the Mars Task Force. And this patch I described was this guy Orr designed, which later the people of the 475th Infantry just enlarged on it and put letters above it, Merrill's Marauders, after Frank B. Merrill, who had commanded the 53rd 07th. So every once in a while I run into some people from that organization. And coming on down the line, we were just outside of Bommel. We was going south towards Rangoon. And stopped for a break beside the road there. And this sergeant come out with a square tin can, 5-gallon can. It had a round opening on top, and he come down. And he's passing out to all the troops down the line Fig Newton bars. I don't know whether you know what Fig Newton bars are. Well, God, we'd been eating rice and sea rations for a long time, and your stomach will shrink on that kind of diet. And we thought, boy, this is great. And we marked the location of this supply dump very carefully, and we bivouacked maybe a couple of miles from there that evening. And I and another fellow from Oklahoma were going back and get a couple of cans, those 5-gallon cans of Fig Newton bars to take with us. Well, we got up the supply dump, and what we hadn't seen was that they had some Gurkha Indian troops there guarding the supply dump, and they're top-notch soldiers. We just thought we'd just walk in and big wheel them, pick up what we wanted and left. Well, that didn't work. Oh, sob, you can't. And they just hell, bribery, everything else we could think of to get these 5-gallon cans of Fig Newtons. So we went, sat down, waited till it got dark, and we thought we knew just exactly what pile these Fig Newtons were in 5-gallon cans. Well, we scrubbed along on our belly, and real carefully we each got one 5-gallon can of these Fig Newtons and on our elbows and belly, and real quietly. Finally we get far enough away, we get up, walk back to where our squadron is. bivouacked, and we go to our troop area, and hey, boy, we've got some of these. And we thought they was a little bit heavy for fig Newtons, but by the time we got the can got them opened, turned out to be 5 gallons of peanut butter. So we had 10 gallons, and we spent the night getting this down. So everybody in the troop that morning had a big glob of peanut butter, and we threw the rest of it away. But it's just one of those interesting things that I guess the moral of that is don't go around stealing something, because you probably couldn't use it anyway. But and that was just prior to, this was in April of 45, and President Roosevelt died. And there again, kind of a bookmark or milestone or whatever you want to call it. But hey, you wake up and your president's dead, and you're half a world away. You say, now just what in the hell is going to happen to us?
You in Burma on that day?
Yes.
Do you recall the location?
Yeah, we was about 3 miles away from the Bommel airstrip. And it had been pretty well known all along that the British didn't care for any American combat troops to be in Burma. So within 24 hours after Roosevelt's death, I believe it was on the 13th or 14th of April, we had turned over all our crew-served weapons, such as your mortars, machine guns, and so on. And we were out at the Bommel airstrip, and we started loading on transport aircraft there. And we didn't know where we was going. All we know was say, hey, you count off, I think, 20 men, and you get on that plane. Next 20, you get on that plane. Next 20, you get on that plane. So as we were all sitting there in this plane, it's kind of warm in there, but we're there again. It's rumors, guess, and your guess was as good as my guess of where we're going, what we're going to do. And these transport planes had been ferrying mules someplace because the evidence was all over there and whatnot. The guy come through there, a pair of sandals and a pair of shorts and a beard, and this corporal had been on there. He was the crew chief or whatever. I got curious about this guy with the sandals, big bushy beard. I said, what's that guy's job? He said, oh, he's the pilot. They were all very spit and polished. I mean, Jesus. So we finally took off from there, and if you ever flown over the Himalayas in a C-47 that didn't have any oxygen, and you look out the end of those wings, and they're going, I'd say, probably 20 feet up or 20 feet down compared to your... And some people's stomachs could stand it, and some of them couldn't. But we ended up in Kunming, China. And our unit had been scattered, as I found out later, all over China. I think it was about 3 plane loads of us, or about 60 of us landed in Kunming. Ended up the same destination. And we were assigned to various units of the Chinese Army. I ended up in a town down on the French Indochina border, Winshan, China. And
Wednesday, the 3rd of August. This is the second tape back with Hugh Brown, and we were speaking of Winshan, China.
Right. And I guess you'd have to say it was kind of a promotion for all of us. We become advisors to the part of the nationalist Chinese Army. And we were advisors to the anti-tank battalion of the, I think it was about the 5th Chinese Army. I can't recall the exact, but I thought it was rather odd. He had some horse cavalry people that had never seen an anti-tank gun, training the Chinese on anti-tank guns, which was nothing more but the old 37 gun that they had at the time. But as being advisors, you know, we had the best of everything. We had some tents to sleep in, got some cots, and had a building, a house there. We used, the officers in charge used, and the kitchen was there. And really, it was a step up in the world. We had plenty to eat. Didn't do a whole lot, and I guess we confused the Chinese as much as they confused us. We did make an effort to improve their marksmanship with individual weapons and rifles, and it was very. These people had been armed with the old Mauser rifles, and they'd been in the hands of the troops since back in the early 30s, when the Germans had been very active in China. And you couldn't pick out of 100 rifles, you might be able to find one that was really serviceable in the condition that we would expect in our Army. And such things as throwing hand grenades was strictly foreign to Chinese troops. They had to be trained to throw the old German potato mashers, and such as that. And one of the short things, we was down at the end of the supply line, and it was soap. Now, soap, in this country, hell, you can go by and steal enough soap in bathrooms to last you a month if you wanted soap. But that wasn't true there, and as a results of that, we had a high rate of dysentery. Now, had known what dysentery was in Burma, and the difference between anemic dysentery but we had a reoccurrence of dysentery there in Winshan because of lack of soap to clean up the cooking utensils and so on. And I remembered receiving a very good case of the trots, as we commonly called them. And we had our squad tent, and to get to the latrine was on the other side of this house. It had a little porch out on it, and the path from where our tents were, we had to cross this little porch to get over to the latrine. So you got out of the cot very gently and kept control of everything in little short steps. And this was at night, and I'm trying to make it to the latrine. It's probably maybe 75 yards from where our tent was. And then crossing this porch, of course, I was barefooted. I suddenly stepped on a snake. Now, you don't have to step on a snake barefooted in the dark and have a bad case of GIs to know the outcome of that. Turned out what had happened, this snake had been in the house, and he was just curious about this guy. Had been reading a book by a flashlight, and the snake had just raised up, and of course frightened the guy, and the guy took it and transferred to and killed him. It wasn't non-poisonous snake, and he just threw it out the door, and it was dead, and I'd stepped on it. And so I painted the porch and myself and the snake and everything a real vivid brown, because we all had a terrible fright there. But we stayed there for considerable length of time, and we had some interesting things, reactions and actions with the French Foreign Legion. Had been they'd come across into China under some sort of agreement. I don't know what it was. But those people had been up in China for a long time. And there was a few Europeans. Most part, the troops were Moroccans. And the turmoil that was going on in French Indochina, the Annamites, as they were known at that time, and as things turned out, was headed up by a gentleman that become known later on as Ho Chi Minh. And really and truly, the American sentiments was with the Annamites. And they'd come across the China border every once in a while and shoot up these French Foreign Legion establishments, and they'd try to kill or wound the French or European officers and whatnot. And they didn't pay a hell of a lot of attention to the Moroccans and so forth, Sinhalese. But it turned out that our officers wanted to bring these wounded over into our compound. Well, it didn't hardly make sense to me. I said, hey, that's their damn battle. It don't belong to me. I didn't sign up for anything other than Uncle Sam's interest. And some of us felt that way, and of course we were overrode or ignored. And the second time they'd had a raid come across the enemy, it's shot up this Foreign Legion detachment group, whatever you want to call it there. Here come, we sent I think we had 2 jeeps, and they'd went over and picked up these wounded Europeans and brought them over back in our compound. And I told Lieutenant, I said, hey, we're sticking our nose in someplace we don't need to be. And he said, well, he put it very diplomatically. Those are the orders he received, and I was receiving mine to shut up. So, and the war, we had a false declaration that the war was over. And we were really pleased and celebrated it. About 24 hours. Got drunker than 900 hells. Shot all the tile off the building that we was in. Woke up the next morning, rain coming down through this. Everything's wet. Terrible damn head hangover. And then we find out the war ain't over. Hey, that was false alarm. Boy, you talk about a lot of sick, disappointed people. We were, God. And then about 4 days after that, we got the official word that the war was over. And of course, we just knew because the war was over. Hell, we'd probably be home 30 days. No doubt in our minds about that. And we was highly excited, and we really expected to get the hell out of there. And I and this other guy, chum of mine, were volunteered by this officer. He said, now, we need somebody to go to Hanoi, Indochina. He said, I don't know what you're going to do when you get there. All my orders are is to send 2 people from here, because we're the nearest unit to Hanoi, Indochina. But you report to the, I want to say, Blanco Bank of Indochina. And it just turned out that one of these legionnaires that had been quartered close to us, father was the president or one of the officers in this bank. And he gave me a note of introduction to him, and told me that we'd be welcome, well took care of. So I asked this officer, and I said, now, this where's the map? Well, how am I supposed to get there? He said, oh, it's real simple. You just get in a boat, get in that river right there, the one that runs through Winshan, China. And he said, it'll run down and get in the bigger river, and it'll turn left or east, and you just stay in that river. That river runs right through the middle of downtown Hanoi. You'll know it when you get there. So I and this friend of mine, we said, hey, it's heading the right way, we're going someplace. So we went down the river. When we got to Hanoi, the Blanco bank wasn't really hard to find. Went in. This Legionnaire's father really made us welcome, put us up in a fine hotel. And the OSS man got to us that evening. We'd arrived there about noontime that evening. We were coming down the river about 3 days. And told us there were some Japanese officers that were quartered in this same hotel we was in. We had to escort them to Shanghai for some, they had some wartime trials there, so we stayed there. But he said, we don't have any planes in here yet, so as soon as we get some planes, you're going to take these Japanese officers to Shanghai. But meantime, just one of you stay sober. And so and keep the hotel notified where you're at, so if we have to find you, we can find you. And the information was given to these two Japanese officers, and they agreed to that. So we had a nice time. It was about 4 days before the Air Force, well, Army Air Corps, got a transport in there. So we lived it up and had a real nice time. We had electric lights, hot and cold water, sheets. We could order anything that we wanted to eat. And the female companionship was not lacking at all. It was really great, boy. So we could stood some more of that, but they needed these two Japanese officers up in Shanghai, so we flew out of Hanoi and landed in Shanghai, and turned these two Japanese officers over to the provost marshals there. And I was assigned to General Wiedemeyer's. He was the theater commander, one of his bodyguards. But when I got to Shanghai, I wanted to look up these guys because they'd broke up our troop back in Bamo. There were some friends of mine I wanted to look up. So I searched around and found some of them in Shanghai. And, of course, they were all partying it up pretty well. And because somehow or another, we'd only been paid once in 8 or 9 months in Burma and so forth. And they'd got the finance officer, and everybody just, boy, filthy rich. I mean, they probably had $200 or $300 American, which was like gold, because the Japanese occupational money was at that time maybe something like 10,000 to 1. The Chinese yen was about maybe, yuan was probably 900 or something to 1. So we were very, very wealthy people. And the drink, I found out that everybody that researched was probably the most favorite in demand, was what they call butterfly. It come big combat-sized bottles. I guess it'd been 2 liters or something like that, I don't know. Or about a half a gallon jug, something like that. And this butterfly was the thing. And the butterfly come in lemon or orange. And we didn't really know the contents, but it had a good effect. So, man, we got into the butterfly. And 2 or 3 days' time, everybody began to have these, you just carried over. You never sobered up. And then when we found out that some had been admitted to the hospital in straitjackets. Found out that the thing that made this butterfly real great was that the opium ash that was put in the bottom of it, and it really gave it an extra push. Well, when I found that out, I decided I had enough of that. But getting back to Mr. Wiedemeyer's personal bodyguard, he was a very nice old gentleman, and I don't really know what I was supposed to do anyway. I mean, I just kind of sat around, kind of a flunky. But I was privileged to some of the meetings that he had with the nationalist Chinese officers and so forth. And General Wiedemeyer was a very articulate, thoughtful, thinking officer, but he had failed to learn any Chinese language whatsoever. And it didn't take long for these folks to pick up on the fact that everything went right by him. So they'd sit there and discuss who was going to get this gasoline and how much they was going to pay each other to. You get that, you get one truckload, you get a truckload. General Wiedemeyer, interpreter, he was in league with these people, so he got a truckload too. But you know, it wasn't really none of my business. My main concern was getting home. I wanted, you know, hell, war was over. I'd done my thing. I wanted the hell out of there. And I run into some old friends of mine, and they said, "Hey, the place to go is Panama." These were old soldiers. They'd been regular Army soldiers, and most of that 53rd 07 Composite, which were regular Army people. And I don't know whether there's any truth to this or not. All I'm going on is hearsay. But those people swore and be damned that they had been in places out in the Pacific, which I don't blame them for getting out of there, but in Panama, Trinidad, Puerto Rico. And these guys had been in the regular Army, and they had knew their way around in jungles. And they say that they were told if they had volunteered for this one mission that they'd go home at the end of the mission. And at the end of Michinaw, they thought they was going home, and they said, "No, hell, you guys are going to stay for the full." And they kind of rebelled, and the way they rebelled, they just refused to take any kind of medical Atabrun or anything. So they were all sick as hell and so on. But I'd run into a couple of them in Shanghai, and I liked them, and they had some interesting tales to tell about places like Panama and the Philippines to soldier in. Hell, I said, hell, the only way I'm going to get out of here is re-enlist. So I re-enlisted in Shanghai for Panama, where these old soldiers said, "Hey, boy, the wine and women are just fine down there." So I came home in December of '45, and the one thing I regret about China, Burma, India, and all French Indochina and all that is, and I really, every day I regret it more and more, is why in the hell somebody didn't tell me what a good time I was having. Now, I would have enjoyed it more if somebody just told me that I was enjoying it. But look back on it when you're 17, 18 years old, and you're that far from home, you get on anybody's beer drinking squad you want to, boy, I would have enjoyed it more if they just told me I was. They told me, but everybody said, "Boy, you're having a bad time. It's really tough," and all that. But in retrospect, it was a hell of a good time. So I guess that just about takes care of my World War II bit. Unless there's something only...
It's quite a good deal, but raises a lot of questions. First of all, you brought along some visual aids here. Why don't you show them off to me?
All right, this is a group of I and some close buddies. I'm the little bright-eyed guy here in the middle. I don't know whether your camera can see it that far away or not, but and you can see how mature I appeared in that picture. And this is I don't know whether we need to show that group picture there. I'm on the far right. That was some acquaintances there in Shanghai when we were all millionaires in our own right. And this is a photo made in Shanghai in 45.
Quite good. Your home was Washington State?
No, my home was Coos Bay, Oregon.
Coos Bay, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And you left there at age 17?
Yes.
What year would that have been?
That'd been 1944. And I was trying to figure this out, backdating from the years. I spent about 12 years in the Army, so it'd have to be 44. But I know I was 17. I know I had to sign up as if I was become 18 and ask for immediate induction to get in the Army. So I was only falsified my age by a few months.
Did you go to Panama then?
Oh yes, I went there. I came home, had a 30-day leave, and then went to Panama.
When did you when were you released from the Army? When did you?
Oh, I finally got out of the Army in 55.
So you served in Korea as well?
That's correct, yes.
Can you tell me a little of something of the rest of those years?
Oh, I was in Panama, and it was everything those old soldiers said it was. And, but I'd contacted some malaria that kept reoccurring, and they'd shipped me from Panama to Utah to a high and dry climate. And at that time, that was almost civilian type duty at this chemical depot there, Thule, Utah. And then the Army began to have some stirrings that, you know, there was everything had been real loose after World War II, that they needed to get some units back together with people that was trained in particularly the infantry. And because we'd been in combat in Burma, we had awarded the Combat Infantryman's Badge, which we feel is probably the best decoration man had. That was the best qualification. If he had one of those, he'd seen the elephant, and he knew what it was all about. So the Army said, hey, all the guys with CIB, at that time you got a tremendous sum of $10 a month for that, with that decoration. And it was really a qualification badge is what it was. And you become an expert infantryman, and when you went to combat, they hung a wreath around it and said, hey, combat infantry badge. And you got $10 a month for having it. So I was in this military police detachment there at Thule, Utah, outside of Salt Lake. And the Army says, hey, you don't get the $10 unless you're in a infantry unit. And I said, hey, I'm going to lose a big hunk of pay here. Hell, I want to go to the nearest infantry unit. I want to keep on getting that $10 a month. So I went to Fort Ord, which was a training division, and trained troops there for a year or so. And that is fine for a while. But it's you know, 12, 14 hours a day of training jarheads, and you had the draft was still on. And some of these people, I'm saying, if you divide them up in about a third, about 1/3 come there and was going to do their bit and get out and go on. And then you had a third that was saying, hey, we're going to play your silly games, do everything, but we want our time and get out and get into reserves. And then the other third were people that weren't qualified to do anything. Hell, they couldn't find their ass with both hands, and they had 2 left feet. And you had to, but they were peacetime, draft, all this stuff. And after 4 or 5 cycles of that, you just said, hey, I don't care what else you got for me to do, but this ain't my cup of tea. So I volunteered to go to Japan, went to Japan, and this had to be about 48, long in there. Went down in the southern part of Japan to the 24th Infantry Division headquarters company I was assigned to. And there again, we had a lot of people that had been teenagers in the end of World War II, and their uncles and fathers and whatnot come home. And of course, everybody has a tendency to tell about the good times and forget the bad times. And so their uncles and fathers and so on, a good bit like mine, talked about wine and women and song and what young soldiers do. So they had joined the Army. Now, let's see, I think we had done away with the draft by that time. And these were all regular Army young men. And they were there for the wine, women, and song. And boy, Japan was just, the meeting place was just like gloves and hands fit. The Japanese ladies admired the American GIs because they were rich by the standards after World War II in Japan. So it wasn't nothing for a private to have a nice private quarters off post, and maid to take care of his clothes, shiny shoes, and other things. And he was in great shape. And I kind of thought it was nice myself. I thought this was a fine thing. I was staff sergeant, and I had an opportunity. I was on the swimming team. I had an opportunity to really get into where the more lucrative things were to be had by smart regular Army soldiers. Was that the lifeguards at the enlisted man's pool and the officers club pool was paid, like $1.50, $2 an hour. You could pick up a few bucks, and of course, if you got over to the officers club, well, you could find some understanding officer could buy you some of that real good American liquor at a real good price of, maybe $1.05 a fifth or something like that. So you'd have something to barter with, and might even drink of it yourself. And so I said, hey, the division was scheduled for an amphibious maneuver late in the year 50. So this was early in 51, and I went down to Kumamoto to become a qualified water safety instructor with the idea that I was going to come back to Kumamoto area and train a bunch of lifeguards for this amphibious maneuver. But on my side of the thing, I was planning, I had lined up to be a lifeguard at one of the officer clubs there. And boy, it was great for a little while, but they had some inkling of what was going to happen in Korea, and the tip-offs was that we'd firing batteries in the 52nd Field Artillery were getting all of their howitzers, and order come out from 8th Army to take all the field ranges. Now, the one important piece of equipment in the Army is the field range. Now, that sucker's a good one, but you got to cook. So they took all the field ranges that had been used in these messes in Japan, and they was to be repaired and stored. They weren't to be used except for field operations. So that kind of clued me that something was coming, and people knew what. But, you know, hell, I was having a good time. I was, like I'm saying, it, you know, I guess I was 22 years old, something like that. And hell, and then the damn bottom fell out of it. This was a few days before, oh, maybe a month or so before the thing started in Korea. The Army added a new branch up in the Pentagon called Enlisted Career Guidance Branch. And hell, I'd never heard of the Enlisted Career Guidance Branch, but I was a regular Army Staff Sergeant. And I was concerned about being promoted like everybody is. And I got this letter from this lieutenant colonel, and he told me what a fine job I'd done, what a good career I had ahead of me in the Army. And if I really kept my nose clean, probably in 6-8 years, I could become a tech sergeant. And really, if I really applied myself, by the time I had 30 years in, I could expect to be a master sergeant. And God, my time frame in enlisted career guidance in the Pentagon was, you know, we were 180 degrees off what we expected. So when the flag balloon went up in Korea, the division headquarters company and division headquarters got up advance party. Probably 20 people were going to Korea advance. So I said, to hell with it. I ain't got nothing to lose but my life. I ain't married. I'm going over there and I'm going to get promoted. If that damn thing lasts long enough, I'm going to be a master sergeant when I come back. So I told my friend where I was going, to tell the captain the next morning, so he'd know where I went to and wouldn't charge me being AWOL. So I attached myself to this group, and they didn't think anything odd, the fact that I was with them, because they knew me and accepted me as one of the headquarters advanced detail. Got to Pusan the next day on a ship from Moji, and 21st Infantry Regiment was there, and I know some of them from being down at Kumamoto on this water training thing. I seen an officer I knew, so I went up and reported to him, and I said, hey, I'm AWOL Division Headquarters Company, and I want to go down and join the regimental recon platoon, because I understand they're going to have some vacancies there. And this Dick Levers was this lieutenant, and he said, Brown, you don't want to go to recon. I said, Lieutenant, I want to go to recon. And he said, Sergeant, he said, you're going down to the Love Company. And I said, I want to go to recon, Lieutenant. He said, Sergeant, you're going to Love Company or you're going to the Stockade. Now, faced with that kind of choice, I decided that he knew a whole lot more than I did. I said, where's Love Company? And he pointed down to this end of this ball field. This is the 4th of July, 1950. That night it rained like hell, and we had about 4 inches of water standing in this soccer field, or whatever kind of big field it was in the stadium there in Pusan. And the next day we loaded up on the trains and went north. And I'd been in combat, and I'll have to say this, that I wasn't eager, but then again I wasn't afraid either. And of course all these young people would ask me how. I said, hey, it's going to be all right if you just do what you're told. And we got up to a place called, we went on right up, the train took us to Chochuan, which is up north of Daejeon. And a lot of false starts in this. We went in this position, then we come back and go in this position. Finally, about the 10th of July, We were about 9 miles northeast of, I'd say northwest of Chochawan. We dug into some pretty good positions, but we had people were getting unhappy that they hadn't signed on to do this sort of stuff, and you have to understand that these people really didn't sign up to fight anymore. They signed up for some wine, women, and song, and they'd been taken away from their wine, women, and song, so they weren't all this hot on this war business. And Harry Truman was not too popular with them for sending us there, but the more aged or more mature people said, "Hey, that's what you take the money for, son. This is what you do. When you take the money, that's a soldier, you soldier." We dug in there on the 9th, and we had part of our regiment that had already been committed on the 4th. Task Force Smith was made up of a couple of companies of the 1st Battalion, and the other 2 companies were out in front of us about 1,800 yards, and they were the remnants of the other battalion. At that time, we were a hollow army, as usual, peacetime. We do away with 1 battalion each regiment, but we got all these regiments, but we don't have them full strength. Companies are under strength. And at the end of World War II, it was decided the infantry is obsolete. We had the atomic bomb, and everything's going to be push button. Hell, the infantry wasn't going to do anything to just, parade and all that stuff. And they hadn't done a whole lot with the improvement. Now, they went on with some research and development, but it would just been a very, very small research and development. They hadn't got to the point where manufacturing, mass manufacturing, such as we had in World War II. So we didn't have the equipment that we should have had. Radios were, hell, the same ones we used in Burma. Hell, some days they work, some days they don't. We was where we could have some telephone lines, as long as some asshole didn't run across them with a tank and cut them up or build a fire on them or something like that. So it wasn't the best of conditions to try to fight under. The artillery had no anti-tank shells, and the sea rations that was issued were 18 years old, real tasty.
18 years old.
Yeah. They had been manufactured in the early days of World War II. There was anticipation of World War II. They was manufactured. But it was just a collection of things that, no one had really thought they was going to fight a war. With this push-button war, we ain't going to have any more of that stuff. Well, the next day, the remains of the battalion out in front of us were in pretty tough shape, so we made the first successful counterattack in the Korean War, and about 1,800 yards up this, got these people out. And that night, we withdrew back to our positions that we'd already dug in. And we had some guests in those positions, not in my particular area, but the company next door had 4 or 5 North Koreans back in the holes that they dug on the 9th. And the next morning, it was one of those days that you never, ever forget. We were up on top of this place, and I'd come to L Company to get promoted. I was still going to be a master sergeant. That was my goal. And I had a young lieutenant and a nice guy. But he had been in the Army, maybe 6, 8 months. And he was going to be a career officer. And the captain told him, standing down the road, you'd put the last position up next to that tower up there, a transmission line run across these positions. And I told him, I said, Frank, hey, this ain't where we should be. Let me take my squad and go back here about 20 yards up on top of this little place. I said, that's where we should be. Well, Frank, he wouldn't, the lieutenant, he didn't want to go against the captain. The captain was pretty stern. And he held these, at that time we had a bunch of reserve officers that went on competitive tour. In other words, they'd change companies every 3 to 6 months and get a lot of ratings, efficiency ratings, and then at the end of the year they're supposed to be either become regular Army officers or told that sorry you didn't make it. So he was, I can understand, he didn't want to have any arguments with this captain any way, shape, or form. And I knew I needed this lieutenant to make master sergeant, because a staff sergeant had to have some, I couldn't have got promoted without his blessing. Well, this is on the morning of the 10th of July. This valley on this river is stacked up with fog, about a couple of 100 feet, so you couldn't see down the bottom of the floor. The day before, when we had made this counterattack on the 10th, we got our first air controller with the Air Force. Came up there, big, good-looking major, fine-looking guy, and had a big whole back of his Jeep with a tremendous radio. And he said that he's got a flight coming in and is going to support our counterattack on the 10th. And sure enough, the first jet aircraft in support of ground troops was made on the 10th. And boy, they were real effective. They killed the major, shot up the radio and his Jeep on the first pass. Kaboom. No more contact with these jets in there. And anything that moves, they shoot at. So you know what happened. Next day on the 11th, we had no communications with any air support. And one of the jets had tangled up in this high tension line in the rear of our position. It's hanging up there. And here comes a bugle call. Now, I have never heard this played on a bugle before, and probably had this guy that shared this foxhole with me was pretty well educated. At the time, I didn't have a real great deal of education. And the North Koreans are blowing this bugle call. And he said, "Hey, Sergeant, you know what that is?" I said, "Hell yeah, that's a bugle." He said, "The guy is blowing the Charged Light Brigade." And hell, I got to listen to him. I said, "Yeah, you're right. He must be a pretty damn good bugler." And then actually the first shots fired on me at the 11th of July come from my rear. And I said, shit, those guys are where I'm should have been. So they were firing down, just, you know, like this table here. They were flying down right down the damn flank of my infantry company. And I said, "Hey, Lieutenant, this ship's got to change here." And he said, "Well, the captain told us to be here, and this is where we're supposed to be." I said, "Hey, Frank, we got to do something. So we're laying on this ground, and I can tell about how high the bullets are, because you can always tell by the snap how close they are. And he said, what should we do?" And I said, "The thing to do is get some mortar fire up on that position, and let's go up there and get that damn high ground up there. We're going to be sucking water all from here on out." He said, "Well, I don't know how to do that." I said, "Well, we got to get somebody to go back down to the 60 mortars, which is company organic equipment, and get some fire up there, and we'll." And he said, "Well, I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, just damn it, take it easy. We'll work this thing out." But he lost control, and he stood up and and took it across the chest. And that was about, fighting probably been going on maybe, this might have been around 9 o'clock. We'd started daylight around 6:30 maybe. So Frank's gone, and then there's a little guy, his name's Brown too, but he was from Arkansas. And I said, now you go down there to those damn 60s, and if the captain's there, you tell him that we want some 60s up on that high ground, and to mark the last one with smoke, or white phosphorus or something, so we'll know that that's the last round, and we'll rush into that thing and clean that mess up. He said, okay. About 2 minutes, he's back. He says, hey, the Koreans got the rest of the company, and they're down there at CP and everything else. That's all bullshit. I don't lose your stuff. You'll have all these guys upset. He said, well, how about you come and look? So we went over and looked, and here, sure enough, here's right up where one of our platoons had been. Here's this machine gunner, Korean, and this Korean officer standing up there with his binoculars directing the fire of this machine gun. And I said, hey, Brown, I said, we got to do away with that bastard. So I said, now, you see that nice big belt buckle that officer has on? I said, you aim at him, at that belt buckle, and I'm going to take that gunner, and when I say 3, you squeeze it off. Well, we did. And that officer went down like a sack of potatoes. And I was lucky and hit the gunner. And then I told him, I'd congregated around me. I'd had 9 men, but I had maybe 17 men. By that time, they'd come in, just, And I said, folks, this is all for today here. I said, now, battalions, somebody else is probably across the river back there behind us getting ready to defend that position. I said, now, the thing that we're going to do is get the hell out of here now. And there was a young man, he says, and I said, now, you guys, I told this corporal, I said, I want you to be the scout going down through there. And he said, no, I'll bring up the rear. And I said, okay, whatever way. So we went down off the slope that we was on. And this position had been a very good position if we'd had a little more support to it. But I don't think it made a hell of a lot of difference either way. But we went down off there, and there was a tank sitting down there that had been firing up in the company CP, and I could see the bow gunner had the road covered well, and 2 or 3 guys had straggled across the road. Of course, it was just duck soup. I said, now, we're all going to go at the same time on 3. And I counted 3, and not everybody, about half the people with me, got up across the road. And this guy, Brown, a little short guy, he was short-legged in a little ditch, and he'd slipped on some gravel, and he was maybe 5 yards behind us getting across the road. And by that time, the bow gunner had been maybe 50, 75 feet up the road, got his act together, and he hit Brown in the leg. And Brown made it close to the ditch, and I reached out and got him, pulled him down the briar patch. And he was he knew he was in bad shape. So he said, leave a grenade with me and I'll do what I can, but you guys go on. So we did. We dropped over off the road. There was a railroad track parallel to the road. All this parallel up the back of this position. And then from the railroad, we dropped about 15, 20 feet down to the river. And by that time at the river, I'd only had about 2 men with me. One of them was Tommy Farr. And I said, those machine gunners up there in that position having a field day. And I said, if we all run the same direction, it's going to be tough. I said, I'm going to run at 45 degrees up the river. Tommy, you run straight across. And this other man, I don't recall his name, I said, now you run at 45 degrees down the river. Get in the cover on the other side of the river and get up on that ridge. I'm sure we're going to have some folks doing something up there. Well, I run across 3 again. We went. And of course, the machine gunner, he couldn't figure out which one he was going, and we all made it across the river. And gotten some cover on the other side and started making my way up this ridge where I told these people that I felt sure some of our folks would be. And I discovered that I'd lost a heel off my combat boot. Now, whether I lost it in the river or whether it shot off or anything, all I know I had some damn nails. And if you ever had a nail in your foot, shoe, and
It hurts.
yeah, and hell, we'd been awake, probably 30 hours at that time. There hadn't been any sleeping. And I said, well, I'll just take that damn thing off. So I took my left combat boot off, and I'm walking sock foot with a shoe. And I said, God damn, this is tiring. So I sat down and took off the other boot. So I knew I could make it barefooted better than that. So that was we went back to Chochewan, and we found out that we'd been, the battalion had really, the Koreans had did a number on us. They had really made one of the better coordinated attacks that was made during the early days. And I still had this goal, and I was going to make Master Sergeant. So we went back to they were relieved, and the remnants of our unit was back at the airstrip at Tejon. So they were bringing up the 19th Infantry Regiment, Coombe River. And I'd got a pair of boots, and I said, hey, I better go up here at the 19th. I'm still need to get promoted. That ain't going to happen back here at this airstrip. So I fell in with some guys I knew from the 19th, and the old first sergeant, quite a character. He says, hell, it can't be rough up there. Brown's going back up there, so don't get nervous. And Vic Hungerford was his name. Hell of a character. And we went back up on the Coombe River, and one of the regimental officers wanted to know what I was doing up there, and I said, hey, I'm trying to get promoted. I'm trying to make tech sergeant. He said, well, we'll get some orders cut on you, sergeant, but you get your ass back to Tejon. So when we got back to Tejon, why they'd sent what was left of the 3rd Battalion, which, if you took the cooks and the supply people that left I and 10 others out of this company, and so we become a squad in K Company, and we were just on the outskirts about a mile or so from Tejon, and the Battle of Tejon was going on. And we were sending out patrols and all this time, so the officer in K Company, Elmer Gainock, big, nice guy. He knew what he was doing. He'd got a battlefield commission in France in World War II, so we all had a lot of respect for him. Well, we went on this patrol trying to get back into Tejon to see what was happening. And I had some of my people with me. And we come up over this little ridge, and I said, now we want to look over this real gently. So I raised up, just crawled up to the crest of this ridge and raised up just enough to see over it. And I looked a Korean who was just as startled as I was, about 10 feet away. He had just raised up to look. And of course we did the prudent thing. He turned around, run down his way. I turned around, run down my way, and we all got the hell out of there. But that was, we was up in the tunnel up there just outside Tejon. We was there probably 5-6 days. I'd have to go back and look at the records to be sure dates and times. But we were one of the things, a yak come by and strafed us and threw out some surrender certificates. Now everybody being prudent, you went out there and picked up one of them and put it in your pocket. You didn't know whether you wanted to roll a cigarette out of it or something, And then we found out that Tozzer was gone, and we withdrew back down the line. And I think the first gab had got there by that time. And then they moved us down on the Nectong River and the Nectong perimeter. I bang yo. It was overlooking the river, and the bridge was blowing across from us. And I had a squad in the K Company, 21st. They'd taken the people left over, what was left from I Company, and they assigned them to the M Company, Heavy Weapons Company. And we had a front, probably it would have been a regimental front that this K Company was trying to defend. And as being remember now, you're the last guys and you didn't come with this unit, you know what happens. You get the details and you get the furthest from the road and all that good stuff. You get chow last and everything else. So that's just the way human life works. It works in civilian life or anything else. You know, if you're not with the group, and you tend to get fed last and all this good stuff. So we got a damn front up there. Been good for a battalion to patrol and control, and I had myself and 10 other men to do it with. But by this time, everybody kind of took this soldiers right serious. And the first day or so, I didn't have any problems. We'd gotten some water, we'd gotten some sleep, we got something to eat, we got a few weapons, and we had an outpost down near the river that we outposted about dark each night to give us some warning if they actually were coming for us. And it wasn't a very desirable job, but I'd taken my turn to start with, and another 2 guys had taken their turn. And so this was about the 3rd night we was there. These 2 guys, and he said, they'd talked it over that day, and because I told them to get some sleep because you're going out in the outpost tonight. So, come about close to sundown, they decided that they weren't going out on the outpost. That I could send them to stockade. And I said, hey folks, I can't do that. There ain't anybody else to go. It's your turn. I told you that this morning. Told you to get some sleep, but. No, we're not going. You can court-martial, do whatever, but we're not going. So I didn't have any choice. I just took the weapons away from them, got some cord, tied their hands behind them, then tied their feet. One at a time, I carried them out, put them in the outpost. And when I carried the second one out, I said, now, if they kill you, holler real loud. And later on that night, my conscience got to hurt me, and I eased out there to see how it doing. I got, maybe within 20, 25 feet. Both of them sleeping away. And I said, well, hell with it. They're all right. And the next day, one of them come up and he says, hey, Sergeant, he said, I'm glad you did what you did, because I'm frightened like everybody. I said, I am too. And following April, I was back in camp getting ready to rotate back, and the other guy come up. He was a Spanish guy, and I'd received a battlefield commission and all that stuff. And he said, God, Lieutenant, he said, you don't know what a damn favor you did me. He said, now I'm going home today instead of sitting in some damn stockade someplace or prison somewhere. And the in-between after that was kind of a real deal. I made tech sergeant there on the Nectong, and the regimental commander wanted me to take a battlefield commission. I said, now, hey, look, Colonel, I'm a regular Army sergeant. I need to be make a master sergeant, so when they cut out these temporary officers down the road, I'll go back to being a master sergeant. He said, hell, I don't need Master Sergeant Brown. I need officers. And he said, you're going to be commissioned as of today. And you're going to be a good one. I said, I'll do my best. Become an officer. And then we stayed up there in the Nacton, probably 2 or 3 couple of weeks. Went back to Tejon, reorganized. We'd got placements up on the Nacton River. Oh, maybe like 150. But the first officer we received was a very, very remarkable man. He is ugly and sin warmed over twice. Big old gawky thing. And I didn't think much about it then, but down the road, this guy had a hell of an impact on my life. And so we got all these replacements and kind of shuffled around, shook them down. We went back to Tejon along middle of August. And the North Koreans were keeping on coming down, and they was coming down over on the east coast. So we left there and went over to an area around Pohang. Actually a little place called KG. And it was, you had all these new troops with you. I knew the old timers by first name, and I could almost tell you who it was by hearing them walk at night. And particularly today, I might walk by a passive fellow on the street or sidewalk or something like that. But if I hear his voice, particularly if it's dark at night and I can't see his face, I can tell you who he is. And the same with all those people. But anyway, I was wounded over there, shot in the arm, and was trying to help out a rock regiment over there. And this is another one of those things that kind of milestone, bookmark, whatever you want to call it. Well, I had gotten hit, and they'd give me some morphine, and going back to this hospital. I don't know where it was, a big old wooden building. But I was not really just a follower. I said, hey, I want to know what's going on. So I spot this bunch in there down at this mobile x-ray, and I'm sent down there to get x-ray, and I see this old sergeant run the x-ray, and I said, hey, Sergeant, I've been shot in the arm here. What do you think the scoop is? He said, well, just a minute, we'll get you photographed. And there's some Koreans in this line, a little Korean right in front of me. And so he sergeant x-rayed my arm, and I said, how long is it going to be before you get to look at that thing? Oh, he said, with this equipment, it'll probably be a couple of hours. He says, there's a cook set up over on the other side of the place. Go over there and get you something to eat, and find you a place where you're going to bunk tonight, and just before dark, come on down here, and I ought to have these things developed. So I did what the sergeant suggested, and I went back there maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. He had this film up there, and he said, damn, Lieutenant, you got $1 million job. Shit, you're on the way to the States probably in the morning, just as soon as they can get you off. I said, boy, that's hard to take, Sergeant. Huh? Can I send you a bottle of booze or something? He said, no. So I go up, sacked out in this old schoolhouse. About 2:30 in the morning, this nurse comes up with a flashlight. Hey, Brown, they want you down in surgery. I said, what the hell, surgery? I said, they ain't going to take my damn arm off here. And she said, well, I ain't going to take your arm off. I said, bullshit. I seen that damn x-ray. So she said, you get your butt down to surgery. So I go on down there, and these poor bastards are probably hadn't had any sleep in a couple of days. And these guys are short-tempered. They didn't have any time to screw around with. They said, now get your ass up there. And I said, wait a minute now. I'm getting serious about it. I said, by God, you're not cutting my arm off. Who said anything about cutting your arm off? I said, God damn, that's what you got me down here for. He says, hell no. He says, all we're going to do is clean that out and send you back to your unit. And I said, like hell. You're not even going to get me close to me. And he said, what the hell's the matter with you? And I said, well, I seen that damn x-ray. That bone shattered. And he said, oh, hell. He flipped her up. He said, I don't see no shattered bone. Got a little nick in that bone, that's all. There's nothing wrong with you. And I said, well, by God, the one I seen earlier today, that bone shattered. And he said, well, now maybe he was seeing that I was serious, and he got a little serious. So well, they stick little lead numbers on your undeveloped film, and when they x-rayed this thing, the guy ahead of me happened to be a Korean, and he had some numbers, and he had wound approximately the same place. And what the sergeant and I looked at is one number from off from the one I was. We was looking at, the sergeant and I had looked at the Korean that was in front of me. His arm was shattered.
He had the more serious injury.
Yeah, his bone was shattered, and we thought it was mine, you know. So
you thought you were going to get to go home.
Well, I thought it was. So they cleaned it out, and they did send me back to Japan for a few days. And I was very grateful for that. And this is something that a lot of people avoid or don't like to discuss. And I find it kind of embarrasses some of my friends that if you've been wounded and you're back in a rear area like Japan and so forth, all you have to do is kind of whine and whimper just a little bit, and they won't send you back. They'll assign you to PX guard or some damn thing like that. And they're real humane about it. But there again, career soldier, I said, hey, that damn thing's going to be over. By that time, this is September. I'm coming back to the unit. Incheon landing and taking on. We're driving north, and hell, I foresee this regiment back in Japan, and I want to be with it when it goes back there, because I'm going to. And of course, I'm a second lieutenant, and I'm very rank conscious, being in the regular army. And I said, shit, I ain't going back to Japan as a second lieutenant. I want to be first lieutenant. Let the second lieutenant take all the garbage details. So I got back to my unit. We were up, I can't remember. I think we were just south of Sewell, about the 15th of September. We got all kinds of people, new officers and all that. So we go on up through North Korea, and I got to do 60 days, I think it is, on the line to become first lieutenant. So it very necessary for me to be there. Well, we crossed the 38th parallel going north, and there again I run into a situation that needed some personal attention. I got about got my head blew off, taking some prisoners and killing some others. And they were very high-ranking. The commissar hates you. We got his secretary and all his records. It was of great help. But I got hit in the head with a grenade. A young fellow with me took most of the blast in his legs. And I went to the hospital, but the hospital was up near Pyongyang. By then, it was a very fluid situation, so got up to the hospital, and they wanted to send me back to Japan. I said, hey, I need another. I had it figured out 32 days or something to get promoted first lieutenant. I said, hey, I can't stand that. And they said, well, we don't want to mess with that piece of grenade that's in your head. I said, don't you worry about it. I'll take care of that. So I went back to my unit because we were moving north rapidly. And a few days, wound just festered, pus, and I kept it bandaged. finally this damn piece of grenade come out. I was all right all the time anyway, but I got my time in. By December I was a first lieutenant, but the war turned ugly again in November when the Chinese intervened, and we're in retreat all the way back down to all the places we've been before. And retreating is bad on morale. I don't care whose army you're in. You have an idea of what Bonaparte felt like when he left Moscow. It was snow on the damn ground. A lot of the troops hadn't been issued the equipment they'd needed. And everything is just no communications again. Radios had improved somewhat, but not a whole lot. And the old standby telephones. Every time a GI got off a truck or a tank or something, he built a fire. And he didn't give a shit if there was 10 communication lines in that ditch and they all burned up. He got warm for just a little while.
It's hard to think of that much wire in the ground. I mean, telephone lines.
Yeah.
You don't think of that these days.
Oh, Jesus, you ought to have seen some of the pictures of wire strung around. But wire was the most reliable communications. Like each infantry company generally in a combat situation has a FO party, forward observer, and he's from a battery, from an artillery battalion. And the way it's structured is a battalion, an field artillery battalion generally supports one infantry regiment. And so we got the most, to get better coordination and whatnot, we generally got the same FO party from the same battery. So these guys were with us, they was part of us. They ate with us, slept with us, and bled with us, and cried with us, and drank with us. And they were part of us. But the first thing they'd do was get a line back to battalions, and if they didn't get hit with any mortar fire or anything, they pretty well damn well took care of us. So we were very careful about our FO party. We didn't want any of them hurt, or if there was only one drink left in the jug, well, the guy at the FO got it. So the wire was the most thing, and up in the upper parts of Korea, we made a attack to get 19th Infantry some relief. And we'd made one of these real classic damn attacks, and we had tanks and support, and we had damn artillery, and it was. You get one of these things. Sometimes it's bad, I guess, in a way, for young people to get in a position like that when you're destroying the enemy and your casualties are light. You get to feeling like you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And it's a hell of a damn wonderful feeling. And it doesn't happen to you very often, but when it does, there ain't nothing like it in this world. And we had that going up in North Korea, and of course when we turned around and retreating, that, you know. But nice thing about the Chinese was most of them, the people we had been in the nationalist army, spoke the language I understood, smoked the cigarettes I understood, and it was in combat with the Chinese army. It was a whole lot different than the Koreans.
When you say that, you mean the prisoners you take then, or
some of them were?
You could speak their language.
Remember,
Yeah.
You remember I talked about the mules?
Yes.
We actually had Chinese troops that had some of the same damn mules that we had in Burma.
5 years older.
Yeah.
Or more. Or
Yeah. Well, this is 50, and that was 45. About 5 years old. But anyway, that was it was a real fluid war down, and then start back in January. We come back up again, and we're inching our way back up. And in February, we really earned our damn pay. I mean, Chinese regiment decided they wanted the ground my company had. And generally, a regiment will have to prevail, but we prevailed that time, of course. Of course, paid a hell of a price. And it's known as the Battle of Sleeping Bag Hill. And I was wounded there the last time. And it was the case where we had the wrong people in the wrong places. We had talked about this FO party. The regular FO party was not there. We had been in reserve up until the day before. So whenever we went in reserve, they generally pulled the FO parties and sent them off to support somebody else. And that's what happened. We went, made this, took this defensive position, and our FO people weren't there. They'd sent us a new, different group. And unfortunately, the officer who had been up at in the early days of Korea up at Suwon with Task Force Smith had been like myself a sergeant, and he'd got a battlefield commission, and he was the one up there as the FO, and I think we could have broke up that attack if I'd had artillery, but he didn't know how to fire high angle. And he come unglued, and so we had to do it by hand. But anyway, I went back and did my stint in hospital back in Japan again, and I had a very, if it hadn't been for a big nurse back there, ethereal therapist, I'd probably whined a little bit and stayed back in Japan. But I said, no, I need to go back over there. And lucky for me, when I got back, the powers that be said, hey, you get to go back and get to be the regimental aerial observer. Fly up and down the regimental front in a light plane, and for that you get flight pay. And after I got through licking the mud off that guy's boots, I said, where's that damn airplane at? So I finished out my tour there as and it was an interesting time. Light planes, these pilots. Now you talk about pilots around here, 2,000 or 3,000 hours. Those guys had thousands of hours. They were up at daylight and down at dark, and they only come down in between to get fuel. Every damn one of them was just, you can imagine. So here's a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young first lieutenant. Hey, how do you fly this damn airplane here? You read, I'll fly the plane for us. So I got in. I enjoyed it. There's another thing. If somebody told me I was enjoying it, I'd enjoyed it more. But so let's see, came home and back to the old home at Fort Ord again. Met a lovely Army nurse. Married her, and I was going to stay in the Army, but we got down to Puerto Rico. And I don't know whether anybody else ever has this happen to them, but you get to seeing, hey, I've been here before, I've seen this happening and so on. Well, Vietnam was warming up, and I was in an infantry regiment, 2 battalions. They didn't have that third battalion in there. Out of 1,600 men, we had maybe 190 out training. Rest were working at the commissary or cutting grass, and no qualification for machine gunners, mortar men, or nothing. Just, kind of lollygag around Puerto Rico. And I said, hey, wait a minute. I think I've been here before. And at that time, captain of 12 years, take-home pay $400 a month. Boy. And I had 2 small children, third one on the way. I said, hey, I can go out and get a job driving a truck and do better than this.
What year? 65?
55.
55.
Yeah.
2 kids and a third on the way.
Yeah.
Their names, your wife's name?
Miss B and Orr, my oldest son, and my oldest daughter was born in Puerto Rico, Cindy, and Risha was just on the way. So, and it was this thing. Smoke was getting hot over in Vietnam. It was Vietnam. I knew it as into China, and I said they're going to do the same damn thing that we did over there in Korea. They're going to commit the troops, and they're not going to be trained or ready. And so I said, well, I'll get out of the Army. I'm not going to fuss with them. And I had no argument. I just said, hey, I made a decision. If I can't agree, then I'm going. But it wasn't quite that simple. I had to wait 3 months from the time I resigned my commission. I had to stay 3 additional months. And in that 3 additional months, another one of these things that's kind of like a bookmark in your mind, if you want to put it that way. In Korea, among the first replacement officers we received were 2 West Point officers. Damn fine men. And they had come out of West Point, and really, in essence, as a college. They hadn't been trained in infantry other than disassemble an M1 rifle. They had both gotten married after the graduation, or the same day or the following day. Went on their honeymoon and their leave. Recalled from their honeymoon leave after a week. Put on a plane, sent to Seattle, flew to Korea. We got 2 of these guys, damn good men. And these 3 months that I had to stay on down there in this regiment in Puerto Rico, I was battalion adjutant that time, and we got 30 brand new West Point officers that probably graduated from the class of 53 or 54, went to Benning, went through the infantry officer school and so on. And with the exception of 3 of them, which would leave about 27 others, after 2 weeks' time in this peacetime regular Army short regiment down there, you could not get a one of those people to even tell you the time of day. They would not. I'm sorry, but I haven't got my watch with me. The damn prevailing brain thing was, hey, if you don't make any decisions, you can't make a mistake.
And we're talking about 1950 or 1955?
This is 1955.
1955.
Late 54, early 55, and this bunch. And I'd had such a wonderful, I'd seen these young officers come straight from West Point. Best goddamn men I ever seen. And then these same young men, under the same, only they'd went through training, graduate course, if you want to call it that infantry school at Banning, 6, 8, 9 months, trained to the hilt. They come to this peacetime regiment down there, and their antenna looks around, and this guy's successful, this guy's successful. And these are the guys, if you don't make any decisions, you can't make any mistakes. And I'd say 27 of those officers immediately jumped on that. That's the way to success. don't make any decisions, and you can't be wrong. The other three, you know, come from sterner stuff, and I'm glad to say that those three were very damn successful Army officers. And the other 27, they just kind of, you know, they finished, but they finished way, way, way back. But I'm just saying that the atmosphere and everything was deteriorated again after World War II. At peacetime, everybody, oh hell, there's atomic bombs, push button, we don't need the damn infantry. And then after Korea, you know, hell, we're not going to get caught up in any more of that stuff. And the rationale or whatever, we just, damn it, can't ever get it through our heads. Desert Storm is a damn good example. It was very successful, but they had about 60 days to stage and train and get their mission, get their equipment, get their gear together over there. And that wasn't true at Pearl Harbor or over in Korea. And even today, I think we get caught up in numbers. Oh, we got this number of divisions, and they're hollow divisions. They're not real divisions. They pare them down, but that's not my field to say that. But I really think that we're making a hell of a mistake by not letting all of our people, and I mean all, every child, should not get a driver's license until they graduate from high school. When they graduate from high school, they should do, I'd say, 3 years compulsory service, either in the military, in the medical field, in the social fields, or whatever, but 3 years. Let them grow up a little more. They'll be about 21, 20, something like that 3 years. And then sponsor them for 3 years of any damn college that they qualify for. I mean, it would eliminate our damn problems, because we'd be turning out some educated people. And they could do more, they'd be better, and this country would be in better shape. Well, I tell you what, I see people that should be, there's no way you can lead a horse to water and make him drink. But if you just fool with him and educate him, you'll come a lot closer to doing it. But the education has to be the mainstay of this country. And I say that a lot, I guess I've gone to preaching instead of talking, but
Little of that's okay.
But it's my feelings that this is a hell of a good country, but it's not so damn good that it can't get better. And one of the ways to get it better is to increase our education all up and down the line. So if that brings us up to this point, and I think
Almost does. I have a couple of questions. Would you like to get some more water?
Yeah, I would.
Hang on. All right, I'll get it for you.
Okay. What's the wire there?
Let's turn the tape back on, and I would simply like to ask how you came to move to the Athens area, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, this is something that, again, is one of those kind of bookmark things in your life that happens. That when I got out of the Army, I knew I couldn't go back to Oregon, go back to logging camps, which my family's been in since early 1800s out there, so I didn't know quite what I was going to do, but my wife was from Paducah, Kentucky, and I had some good friends, been with me in the Army, in Korea, and they insisted I come to Atlanta, Georgia, and visit with them. So we came to Atlanta to just visit a few days with these old friends. And hell, when I got here, they had a house next door to them that was vacant, it was for sale, and I had a choice of 4 jobs. Whichever one I wanted to take, that was it. So I said, well, hell, this looks like to me that's where I need to be. I was still there, the old friends were there. And we stayed in Atlanta until the early 60s, and 4 children by that time. And it's getting pressing on now. How am I going to send these to college? And I traveled north end of Georgia, and I said, hey, that town of Athens up there is nice, and they got a university there, and we could probably afford to send our children to college if we lived there. Well, my wife was not really all that keen on it. They had a school superintendent down in DeKalb County named Jim Cherry, and he had a propaganda-like machine that had all those parents thinking that their children were geniuses. So Miss B didn't really go for this coming to Athens bit, but she went along with it. We got here, and my oldest son was maybe about the 3rd, 4th grade, something like that, and my oldest girl was maybe in the 2nd or 1st, something like that, and the youngest girl was just going to start school that year. I think it was the way it was. Baby Tab wasn't starting school, and we lived over in what we refer to the Navy area, normal town part of there. And at that time, all the children went to Chase Street School. So come time to enroll in school, Miss B went down to Chase Street, and it was with our youngest daughter, Risha, was just starting the school. And she is still, not too damn pleased with things because she knew that they'd get a better education in DeKalb County. Just one of these little things that's smoking there. Well, I happened to be home. She come home taking Risha down to enroll her in Chase Street. She come up the walk to the house, and she was walking about 2 feet above the sidewalk. And I said, hey, Miss B, what do you think of that school down there? Well, she had been sold. I think there was 9 teachers at Chase Street at that time. The principal had a doctor's degree in education. Every teacher had at least a degree in education. And there's 4 or 5 masters in education. And all the school teachers at that school at that time were college professors' wives. And the one instance that sold me was my son, or he was kind of like me. He didn't really take the education too kindly. But I come in, and he's doing his homework, and hadn't beat him, hadn't shut off television or anything like that. But man, he's doing it. And I said, Over, what you doing, son? He said, Daddy, we got the dumbest old teacher up here. And I said, yeah, tell me about this old dumb teacher up here. And he says, we get to take a practice test on Thursday, and if we make 100 on the practice test, we get to go play on Friday. Isn't she dumb? And I said, boy, she's the dumbest I ever heard of. So there again, I get back to this education, because we had some lady was a teacher over there, and she had got this guy to do it. We used to just fight him, turn off the TV, couldn't watch TV, you can't go outside till you do your homework, one of those things. Turn completely 180 degrees. Being there Wednesday, boy, I got to get 100 on that test Thursday. I get to go out and play Friday when they take the test. But if I get 100 on the practice test, I don't have to take it on Friday. Boy, that lady was a tremendous damn teacher. And we don't have enough of those.
What line of work, what sort of jobs were you doing after you retired from the Army?
After I got out of the Army. I didn't retire from it. No, I was construction work, and it wasn't really new to me because in the logging operations there's always a certain amount of construction going on. And just went into the commercial construction field, and I traveled selling equipment and tools and equipment and specialty equipment and so on. And a local developer here, Mr. D.D. Say, who recently passed away, said, "Hey, why don't you come to work for me? We're just getting ready to build a Beechwood shopping center." And I said, "Well, that sounds reasonable." So I went to work with him, and been here ever since, about 33 years, and enjoyed every damn minute of it.
If I tossed a couple of names from the World War II era out at you, could you just tell me what you thought of, say, President Roosevelt?
Oh, I thought he was doing a hell of a good job with a lot of handicaps, and I really thought of him as a great man. I think he was.
Did y'all think highly of Eleanor Roosevelt, or not think about her much at all? Or?
Well, Eleanor Roosevelt was a. You want to remember, I was with the 124th Horse Cavalry, and that was predominantly Southern troops, and they didn't really much care for Eleanor, but it was due to race as they perceived it, the way it should be run. This is the way Daddy did it. This is the way we should do it, you know.
If I may bring up the race issue, did you have any feelings one way or the other in wartime that might pertain?
Well, let me say it this way. They didn't really integrate the Army until during the Korean War and parts of that. In the early days, they had a separate regiment that was with the 25th Division. That was there in Japan. I knew one of the sergeants in it. Nice guy. I'd say he'd probably do well. And we didn't receive any in Love Company until, it had to be probably January, February, March. In March, after that battle at Sleeping Bag Hill, we lost about 60%. But no, the ones we have, back World War II, I don't know who coined it or whatever. They said there's no atheists in foxholes. You better believe that's true. And if you're there, and I don't give a damn if it was the devil himself, if you're thinking, hey, this guy might just keep me alive one more day, I don't care who he is. And I think that's really, when you really get down to the real crux of the matter, speaking from a combat infantryman, he wouldn't give a damn who was there as long as he's going to help him stay alive. And that's the real meat of the thing. And the last thing you do at night, you say a little prayer. Lord, let me live to see the light of one more day. And the next day, when you see a little light, you say, thank you, Lord. So it doesn't it doesn't really matter. And the ones that we got in Korea that I meet with and talk with, there is no distinction. Hell, that's Frank Ivy, biggest black dude you want to see, damn fine man. And I think that's probably all the people that bet their lives will tell you the same thing. Now, we have a great many, I choose for lack of a better description, to call drugstore veterans. The woods are full of them. You can hear anything you want to hear. And they, I don't know, I guess they're didn't have an opportunity or something to do their bit when they had a chance or something. But anyway, I don't think race and hopefully I don't think race is a big thing in this country anymore. I think you have some of the, we have this damn thing about the Georgia flag going on. I think we could all be doing a hell of a lot different. And I've got empathy for the people that was born and reared here. One of the interesting things that happened to me when I first went to work in Atlanta was I traveled north end of Georgia and called on construction people, and invariably, gee, you talk funny, where are you from? And the next place you go, hey, you're not from around here, you sure talk funny. So that got to me the first few days of that. I thought it over. So after that, when the conversation was, gee, you talk funny, where are you from? I said, I'm a Georgian by choice, not by chance. How are you a Georgian? One time around territory, that answered, and there was no problem after that. And I think race is about the same thing. That you got a bunch of sorry folks, and the color doesn't matter. They're still sorry. But you got a bunch of good folks, and the color don't matter. They're good folks. But you always have the people who's got a axe to grind, or they got to keep people stirred up and agitated to secure their positions and so on. There's a case in point. There's a black guy that's worked with me for years. He's a few years older than I am. Louis Barksdale. And I see Louis. I said, hey, Louis, I'm talking to Jose down in Atlanta. And he said for me to come by and pick up the money and take it down. Louis said, just a minute, Hugh, I'll write you a check. I said, no, Louis, Jose don't want any check. It's got to be cash. Now, you let me have the cash. Now, you know that I'll take it down there and give it to Jose for you. He said, no, I can't give you nothing but a check. But it was all there's a lot of people that imposed on other people, but I think by and large most of them know what the hell they're doing. Sure, there's always some few minority of both groups is going to get all screwed up and ass backwards, but I think most of them are pretty reasonable people if they're approached in a reasonable manner.
Final question, I suppose. Since you're leading the Order of the Purple Heart for this community, could you tell me a few words about the Order of the Purple Heart?
Well, I think that I'm two minds of it. The one I wanted to bring you, I didn't bring. No, there's one more I intended to bring with you, but it's just that the people there have a common bond in that they've wounded, and they don't think that they're anybody outstanding or special. They're just folks like you and I that happen to have that connection. And there again, there's been some people that's organizers and promoters and so on and so forth have made a good thing out of it. And all your military veterans groups to all extent. That's why there's so many of them. They proliferate. There's always some guys called the executive secretary that draws $150,000 a year and expenses, you know. And so the Purple Heart has that aspect in it too, and it's kind of an ongoing thing to keep the resources down where the people that earned them and entitled to them and get to use them, and that we don't just hemorrhage to death sending dues and payments to this goody thing, this goody thing, this goody thing. So, but all your military organizations or veterans organizations are good. They're just like religion. And religion, sex, whiskey, all that stuff is good if you don't overdo it. Now, when you overdo it, that's when things start falling apart.
Well, if we go on any longer, we'll have overdone it. I'm very grateful for your time this morning. Let me turn this off.
Now, this is just to keep the record straight, so we don't have any problems, you know.
This is
my discharge, the back of my discharge, DD 14.
And I can mostly read it. It's white lettering on the negative here. And at that point, you were a second lieutenant.
That's where I entered at. That takes a little